Okay, so we talked about Chris at Adams Camp in the last video, and I talked about Chris signing play for the first time. So, what is a sign? You can look at it as a meaningful gesture. So, when Chris signed play, this motion was signed with the meaning of play. You can think of difficulty with producing meaningful gestures as difficulty with praxis. That's Praxis. When children have difficulty making gestures, it's called developmental dyspraxia. When adults who've had some sort of brain injury have a loss of praxis ability, it's called acquired apraxia. Most of what we know about praxis, we know from the study of persons who've had a stroke in terms of how the brain's connected and what brain pathways are needed in order for praxis to fully function. Now, in order to evaluate whether someone has apraxia, there's a series of gestures, you can think of them as pretend gestures, you can ask them to make. So you can ask them things like, show me how you would pretend to brush your teeth. So you actually pretend, like the instructions are that you pretend like you're holding the toothbrush and you do it exactly how you would do it if you were brushing your teeth. It could be pretend to brush your hair with a brush. Show me how you salute like a soldier. So why does this matter? Why am I speaking to this? Well, though many people who have worked with people with autism, either in research or clinic or parents, have thought that praxis is impaired in autism, it's really only in the last probably 15 years, which is actually fairly recent in science, that they've looked at praxis in autism, how they look at it in adults with autism. And so they're specifically looking again at that brain connectivity and trying to tease apart what's breaking down in the system. Actually, in fact, the true gold standard of science is when multiple labs in different places produce the same result. And in regards to praxis study in autism, I think it was probably the first study I'm aware of came out in 2006, and then several others came out, and they all found a similar thing. And what they found was that the worse the developmental dyspraxia, the worse the autism, the more poorly a person would do on a standard IQ test. And also that it seems to be specific to autism above and beyond other developmental disabilities like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or another disorder called developmental coordination disorder that actually is defined in that the kids have trouble with coordination and praxis. It gets really complicated, and the way I'm explaining it is so you can understand, because there's not just one way to test for dyspraxia, and there's a lot of different theories, and depending on if you're a therapist or a researcher, it's defined differently. But the cool thing is that the multiple labs have found this in different ways. So in the next video, I'm going to speak to some of the things that we see in autism and talk about dyspraxia and why it makes sense that we see the things we do in autism.